Hello, welcome to Return to Self. My name's Alana, and if we haven't met before, then it's lovely to meet you. Now, today I received a very interesting download, and this download was actually from St Teresa de Avilla. She was a Catholic nun in the 1500s who was a mystic. What I have been told by her is that there are a select number of people out in the collective at the moment who are feeling pulled within, not just to use their abilities. It extends beyond that, is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that some people know that they have been placed here on earth at this time for a very specific reason, and that they feel this calling really deeply within their soul. And to me, this calling feels like it comes from God. It's something that you feel innately, and it's something that you know that you can no longer avoid. I feel like this is the reason that you are being called within. This is why there is a number of people out there at the moment that are identifying with hermit and lone wolf type energy. I do believe that your life experiences have forced you to go very deeply within, basically to be able to heal traumatic experiences that you've had. But I also see that these experiences have deepened your level of compassion and understanding of humanity. So what St Teresa has basically asked me to do is to speak about the book that she wrote back in the 1500s called The Interior Castle. The book talks about 7 different mansions within the soul. So the first she talks about is where the soul becomes aware of the existence of the castle. So it's aware of a spirituality that it's not of the world, if that makes sense. It recognizes that it goes beyond that. There's also a longing for God, but at the same time, the soul also recognizes that it has a tendency to be distracted by external factors, its shadow side and things like that. The second mansion is where the soul learns to hear God's voice amongst the world's turbulence. So I guess it's that ability for you as a soul to be able to practice more of self-contemplation. It's that practice of being able to go within and spend time connecting with those deepest aspects of yourself. And usually you start to be drawn towards certain texts, certain books, certain teachings of a spiritual sort of nature. So as a mystic, you may identify with a certain religion. So that could be Catholicism, it could be Buddhist. There's lots of different religions out there that mystics have come from traditionally. But I also feel that you don't need to belong to any one religion. So I'll give myself as an example. I grew up in a non-religious family, but I was introduced to the Baha'i religion when I was 5 or 6, when I started going to school, because basically we had to do some form of religious studies. And I guess through that experience, I was exposed to a lot of Baha'i kind of practices. They spoke about sort of lots of disciples and messengers that religion naturally sort of believes in. And although I was never necessarily a Baha'i myself, I very deeply resonated with the experience of going to temples and things like that, even from a young age. It was somewhere where I felt very safe. I think my soul kind of knew that it belonged in that sort of temple, in that place. I later found, as I went through my teenage years and things like that, I had friends that were Catholics and Christians. And so I ended up spending time in Catholic churches and things like that. I was never Catholic myself. I identified with a lot of the practices that Catholics have. I didn't mind going to church. I felt really comfortable being in churches. As a non-religious person, it was never in any way off-putting to be there. I later found out, especially as my psychic abilities and things like that started to come out, that I had actually experienced a lot of past lives. As a nun, I do have a lot of guides that come through that are female nuns. So obviously I've spent some lifetime in a religious capacity, I would say. So just be aware that you don't need to belong to any one certain religion. I would say that I'm still non-religious, but extremely spiritual. I can identify with Buddhist concepts. I can identify with Sufi concepts. I can identify with Catholic concepts. So you definitely don't need to be religious to be a mystic. I think that this is part of the reason that mystics have chosen to come into the world. As the world changes, as society changes, we're now beginning to lean away from religious kind of practices and we're leaning into spirituality in general. So what this means is that we can now become mystics in the everyday world. Whereas before, previously, to be a mystic, you often had to spend time in temples, in churches, in constant prayer and things like that. I don't think that that is the case these days, although I do think that you do need some sort of spiritual kind of routine. So that could involve meditation, talking to God if that's what you resonate with, talking to Source if that's the term that you prefer to use. But it's basically conversing with the universe, with God, and just allowing yourself that time to kind of escape the modern realities that we live in, our jobs, our lives, just everything that we have going on these days. So the next mansion after that is the third mansion, and this is where prayer becomes difficult and dry and your soul's humility is tested, basically. So for some people, this can be a feeling of disconnection with God, with the universe. I've definitely been through periods of this, especially during dark nights of the soul, which I believe is probably a part of that ego death. So there has been times when I've experienced dark nights of the soul where I have felt completely disconnected from my psychic and intuitive abilities. I haven't been able to sense anything outside of myself during those times. And during those times, you can feel like you have been quite forsaken, might be the word for it. You can feel like there's nothing out there, and therefore it can make you feel like God, the universe, and things like that don't actually exist because you can't experience them at that time. The fourth mansion is when your senses become stilled and a quiet happiness emerges. So I would say that this is basically after you have moved through probably a few dark nights of the soul. And this is where you are suddenly able to really feel that calling inside you, and where you are no longer happy maintaining the status quo, basically. I think for me, this has appeared in ways like no longer resonating with jobs that I know just aren't in my highest timeline, but no longer resonating with friends as well. So I can have good friendships with people and then all of a sudden there's some sort of frequency change or something like that, and I just don't resonate with those people anymore. And while those situations can be challenging, there's also a really deep sense of trust and stillness, I think, inside of me, other than that anxious kind of rumination that tends to happen, I guess. And that's completely normal. I think it's an experience that a lot of people have. That's experience of anxiety, frustration, anger, and all of those things. But as you move further into your soul, a lot of that ego facade, I guess, starts to drop away. In the fifth mansion, apparently you become engaged to God. So you feel a deep union with God, and God's presence is deeply felt within your life. So for me, I guess that this is where you just know that you are here on the ground, experiencing life experiences that you need to have, but also recognizing that you have a deep inner calling. And you basically start to hand over a lot of your trust and faith to God and allow Him to lead you and to place you in the situations that you need to be in. So in the sixth mansion, your soul experiences spiritual favors, but also frequent separations as well. And purification continues to occur. So basically, you might be rewarded spiritually for making the sacrifices that you have been asked to make. But there will still be those times of separation. I think as you probably step in and out of different frequencies, you do still feel that separation from Source and from God. In the seventh mansion, your soul will reach the center of your castle. This is referred to as divine union, or a sort of a spiritual marriage, if that makes sense. So you feel as if you are married to God and you are fully willing to sacrifice yourself for His aims. And that is going to be entirely unique to each individual. Each individual here will have a different purpose for being here. So what I'm being told is that you are at the moment being asked to remember that purpose. I feel like for a lot of you, you already do remember that purpose. I have a nun here coming through who is saying me the words impurities. So she's asking you to spend time in further reflection as you do transform and transmute the impurities that you have. They are wanting your energy circuits to be fully cleared so that you can live in total trust and faith with the universe. When you're able to let go of any sort of sense of codependency and things like that, you then are able to do what's right, what you are being called to do, rather than not making those decisions and sacrifices and things like that. And I guess sort of spirit being able to use you in the highest way. So what I'm being told now is that you do need to spend a lot of time in prayer and quiet reflection. So that can even just be sort of meditation and things like that, if that's what you are more drawn to. It can involve asking the universe to send you messages and things like that about what you're required to do at this time. Basically, they will help you to work out what your soul mission is. So just know that the time that you have and are spending in that sort of lone wolf kind of energy, although it's lonely, it's a really cathartic experience to go through. You can only transmute dense energy by going into deep contemplation. Soul really needs to sort of come back to itself so it's not being distracted by the external world. As your frequency increases, you will find that your life improves dramatically. So with each frequency change, you should notice that your life becomes easier. Basically, what they're asking for is just for you to become increasingly aware of your internal state, aware of yourself as a soul, because there are changes needing to be made. I'm being told that a lot of you are fairly tired. This is the purification process that's going on. You will feel a sense of renewed energy, I feel, in the near future, but you may find that this fluctuates as well as you follow your callings. You may go through periods of higher energy and then periods of lower energy as well. The reason you as souls have a lot of energy to transmute is because you are old souls. So you are souls that have been here for potentially many lifetimes, basically, choosing to have in each lifetime. The reason for this was so that you could experience duality and contrast and things like that, but also so that you could expand your soul's consciousness. I do feel like that when you reach that mystic point, which I believe is probably a part of the ascension process, part of that individuation process, it takes a lot of time. You have to be at a really high frequency to reach that point of becoming a mystic. So being a mystic is very different to just being a psychic or a medium or something like that. It is a deep soul calling. It will feel more like you are here to do something for the world, basically, something important for the world that is outside of yourself. You will feel that calling, basically, and it's extremely hard to escape. I hope that this has helped somebody who needs to hear this at the moment. If you have any further questions, comments, ideas, or anything like that, please leave comments down below in the comments section, and please like or subscribe if you have found this useful in any way. All right, thanks for that. Bye.